Most people live under the illusion that life should be easy, without major difficulties, without moments of pain or frustration. This expectation, although common, is a trap. When challenges inevitably arise, those who believe in this idea feel defeated, unmotivated, and even wronged. The problem does not lie in the difficulties themselves, but in how we perceive existence. If you expect everything to be smooth and comfortable, any obstacle will seem unbearable. Carl Jung teaches us that suffering is not a mistake in the human journey. On the contrary, it is an essential element for personal growth. Human beings need challenges to become stronger, wiser, and better prepared to handle life fully. However, we live in a world that constantly seeks to eliminate discomfort at any cost. Medications, distractions, and shortcuts are used to avoid any form of emotional pain, but ironically, this weakens us even more. Jung stated that there is no therapy capable of eliminating all of life's difficulties. In fact, that wouldn't even be desirable. What truly matters is not avoiding challenges, but learning to deal with them in a healthier way. Many of the emotional problems we face are not the result of something being wrong with us, but rather of a lifestyle that disconnects us from reality. Modern society has taught us to seek comfort above all else, making any discomfort seem like a sign of failure. Therefore, one of the first necessary changes to avoid wasting our own lives is adjusting how we interpret difficult moments. When someone believes that everything should be easy, any failure becomes a reason for despair. But when we accept that life is inherently challenging, we start seeing problems not as insurmountable barriers, but as opportunities for growth. This change in mindset is crucial for those who want to build a more meaningful life. Imagine someone who decides to start practicing a sport but gives up at the first difficulty because they feel they lack talent or shouldn't have to try so hard. The same happens with many aspects of life: relationships, careers, personal projects. If we believe that everything should happen effortlessly, we end up giving up too soon. But those who understand that effort is part of the journey not only persist, but also become more resilient. Living without waste means abandoning the illusion that life will always be comfortable. Instead of avoiding challenges, we must face them head-on, understanding that they are part of the evolution process. Jung reminds us that happiness does not come from the absence of difficulties, but from the ability to face them with courage and maturity. Many people spend their lives trying to understand what went wrong in the past, believing that finding the root of their problems will be the key to overcoming them. This idea may seem logical, but according to Carl Jung, this search for the past can be a major trap. Instead of helping, it often traps us in cycles of self-sabotage. The reason? We become so focused on understanding the origins of our suffering that we forget to deal with the present. Of course, our history impacts who we are, but Jung warned that the obsession with finding an explanation in the past often becomes an excuse to avoid change. Many people justify their insecurities, fears, and behaviors by saying they are all results of childhood traumas or negative experiences, but this approach can leave us stuck. By placing all the blame on the past, we unconsciously convince ourselves that there is nothing we can do to change the present. And that is a great waste. Life is happening now. What really matters is not what happened years ago, but what we choose to do today. Jung believed that instead of being stuck in the past, we should focus on the responsibility we have for our actions in the present moment. This means stopping the search for culprits, letting go of old stories, and starting to act to build a better life now. But why do so many people insist on clinging to the past? The answer is simple: change is uncomfortable. If we admit that the problem lies in the present, then we will have to take action. This requires effort, courage, and often giving up certain emotional comforts. After all, blaming the past gives us a false sense of relief. It's as if we are telling ourselves that we are not responsible for our situation. What Jung proposes is a new perspective. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" we should ask, "What can I do now to change?" This is a crucial point for those who wish to live without waste. The more time we spend digging into the past, the less time we have to transform the present. This does not mean we should ignore our emotions or pretend that traumas never existed, but it does mean that, regardless of what happened before, We always have the choice of how we will react from now on. Life does not wait for us, and every day spent dwelling on the past is one less day to build something new. Jung invites us to face this truth head-on. Our greatest opportunity lies in the present. The time to act is now. Each of us carries within aspects of our own personality that we prefer to hide. These are impulses, desires, flaws, and insecurities that we repress, often without even realizing it. Jung called this hidden side of our psyche the shadow. It represents everything we do not accept in ourselves, not necessarily because it is bad, but because we have been taught to reject these parts throughout life. The problem is that the more we try to ignore them, the more influence they exert over us. Jung stated that a wasted life is one lived in denial of its own shadow. This happens when we refuse to see who we really are, believing that we can simply eliminate or hide the undesirable parts of our personality. But the shadow does not disappear just because we pretend it does not exist. On the contrary, the more we avoid it, the stronger it becomes. The result? Self-sabotaging behaviors, unexpected emotional outbursts, poor choices, and a constant sense of dissatisfaction with no apparent cause. Many people spend their lives projecting their shadow onto others. They criticize in others exactly what they deny in themselves. Have you ever noticed how sometimes someone is overly bothered by certain attitudes in others? This happens because those traits reflect repressed aspects within that very person. That is why Jung argued that observing what irritates us in others can be an excellent clue to discovering aspects of our own shadow. Accepting the shadow does not mean surrendering to our worst impulses. On the contrary, it means becoming aware of them so that we can control them. Everything we ignore within ourselves gains more power over our actions. But when we bring the shadow into the light of consciousness, we have the opportunity to integrate it in a balanced way. Thus, instead of being dominated by unconscious impulses, we begin to act with more authenticity and self-mastery. The shadow can also contain repressed positive aspects. Often, out of fear of rejection, we stop expressing our true essence. People who were discouraged from asserting themselves may repress their strength. Those who were taught to avoid conflict may lose their ability to stand up for themselves. Recovering these aspects can be liberating, as it allows us to access talents and abilities that had been dormant. Living without waste means accepting ourselves completely, with both strengths and flaws, and working to become the best version of ourselves. This requires courage, but it is an essential step toward an authentic and meaningful life. Jung teaches us that only when we face our shadow head-on can we truly take control of our own lives. Amid the chaos of modern life, many people feel lost, without purpose and without direction. We live in a society that values material success, productivity, and the pursuit of status, but neglects something fundamental: the meaning of existence itself. Carl Jung believed that a significant portion of emotional disorders, such as anxiety and depression, arise from the lack of a clear purpose. Without a sense of meaning, human beings become vulnerable to existential emptiness, trying to fill this void with superficial distractions that, in the end, only deepen their sense of dissatisfaction. Jung invites us to reflect on what truly drives us. He observed that ancient cultures had a much stronger sense of meaning than most people in modern society. To illustrate this idea, he spoke about his encounter with a Pueblo tribe chief. This leader explained that his people believed they were responsible for helping the sun rise every morning. They saw their existence as part of a great cosmic drama, where every action had a greater purpose. And, unlike modern man, they did not suffer from neuroses, existential anguish, or identity crises. This leads us to a fundamental question: how can we rediscover this sense of meaning in our own lives? Unlike traditional societies, where shared mythologies offered a collective purpose, in contemporary Western society, this search has become individual. Each person must find, on their own, something that justifies their existence. This is not an easy path, which is why many give up along the way, surrendering to an empty lifestyle where everything is reduced to consumption, entertainment, and fleeting distractions. Jung believed that finding purpose did not necessarily mean following a religion or adopting a specific spiritual view, but rather discovering something that gives meaning to one's journey. For some people, this may be found in art, science, the pursuit of knowledge, or dedication to a greater cause. For others, it may lie in contributing to the community, building meaningful relationships, or engaging in work that has a real impact on others' lives. What matters is that, without a purpose, life becomes a repetitive cycle of meaningless tasks, leading to frustration and a sense of waste. When we live without a sense of purpose, we become more prone to falling into the trap of constant comparison. We seek validation on social media. We always want more money, more recognition, more status. But none of this truly fills the inner void. The only thing that can fill this space is the certainty that we are living in accordance with something that truly matters to us. Jung saw this as one of the pillars of mental and emotional health. A human being who finds meaning in their existence can face life's challenges with much more strength and resilience. If there is one lesson we can learn from Jung, it is that the search for meaning is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Without it, we waste our lives chasing things that will never satisfy us. With it, we find a real reason to keep moving forward, no matter the difficulties. In the modern world, many people live in a constant state of dissatisfaction. Even with comfort, security, and opportunities that past generations could never have dreamed of, they still feel that something is missing. This sense of emptiness drives them into an endless search, whether for status, wealth, recognition, or experiences that can distract them from the uncomfortable reality that they are not quite sure why they are living. Carl Jung saw this phenomenon as one of humanity's greatest crises. The lack of a deep sense of meaning in life leads to compulsive behavior, in which we try to fill the void with anything that promises a temporary feeling of satisfaction. Jung observed this behavioral pattern not only in his patients but in society as a whole. He once told the story of a woman he met, a compulsive traveler who was constantly moving from one place to another, always searching for something she never found. In her eyes, Jung saw a deep anguish, like that of a cornered animal. She couldn't stop moving because, deep down, she feared what she might find if she were alone with her own thoughts. This is the reality of many people today. They rush from one goal to another, from one relationship to another, from one purchase to another, hoping that, at some point, they will finally feel they have arrived where they are supposed to be. But that arrival never happens. That's because what is missing cannot be found in external things. Modern culture reinforces the idea that happiness is always in the next step, in the next job, the next relationship, the next achievement. But Jung warned that this is a dangerous cycle because the moment we attain what we desire, we realize that the feeling of satisfaction is short-lived, and soon we are already chasing something new. This mindset turns us into eternal dissatisfied beings, always running after something without even knowing what we truly want. The core issue, according to Jung, is that many people try to escape the discomfort of emptiness instead of facing it. Existential emptiness is not something that can be ignored or distracted with superficialities. It is a sign that something essential is missing in our lives, a true purpose, something beyond the ego and material achievements. But how do we find this purpose? For Jung, the answer is not outside, but within us. Instead of seeking external validation, we must turn inward. Self-knowledge is the key to breaking the cycle of desperate searching. We need to ask ourselves why we are so dissatisfied, why we feel this emptiness, and what could genuinely bring us a sense of fulfillment. This journey requires courage because it means abandoning illusions and facing uncomfortable truths about who we are and what we truly want from life. Society has taught us that we should seek happiness in accumulating goods, experiences, or recognition. But Jung reminds us that all of this is secondary. The true meaning of life is not found in fleeting achievements, but in the ability to find meaning in existence itself. Those who manage to do this escape the trap of emptiness and begin to live with more clarity, purpose, and authenticity. If there is one thing Jung teaches us, it is that life cannot be fully lived without a sense of purpose. But finding that purpose is not something that happens by chance, nor is it something that can simply be bought or copied from someone else. In the modern world, where so many people feel lost and disconnected, the greatest need is not to have more money, more success, or more validation, but rather to discover a meaningful role within one's own existence. Jung saw this as one of the deepest challenges of the human journey. To illustrate this idea, he contrasted two very different worldviews, that of a Pueblo indigenous tribe, who believed they had the sacred duty of helping the sun rise every day, and that of a modern Western woman who lived in a state of compulsive searching, always hoping that something external would give meaning to her life. What ancient peoples had, and what many of us have lost, was the certainty that their actions had meaning within a greater context. They did not need to ask whether their lives had purpose because their culture already provided that answer. However, in the modern Western world, where there is no longer a collective mythology to guide our perception of what is important, it is up to each of us to build this meaning for ourselves. This is a difficult process, which is why so many people get lost along the way, seeking distractions that only mask the lack of real purpose. But Jung warns us that living without a defined role in the drama of life is one of the greatest wastes a person can commit. Finding this role does not mean following a path already laid out by others. It is not simply about choosing a career or a social status. For some, the meaning of life may be found in art, science, spirituality, the pursuit of knowledge, or contributing to a greater cause. For others, it may lie in something simpler and more intimate, like building meaningful relationships, being a good parent, or helping those around them. The central point is that each person must discover, on their own, where their life fits into the greater flow of existence. This search requires deep reflection, asking yourself, what am I doing here? And, does my life make a difference? Can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Jung believed that without this clarity, any success becomes empty, any achievement loses its shine, and any happiness quickly fades. Without a greater meaning, life becomes just a sequence of random events, where we are always waiting for something that never arrives. Jung's great lesson is that a life without waste is not one free of difficulties, but one that has purpose. When we find our role in the drama of life, we stop feeling like prisoners of circumstance. We begin to see challenges as part of the journey and difficulties as opportunities for growth. Anxiety and depression, which so often arise from a sense of lack of meaning, start to lose their grip when we know exactly why we are here and what we are building. The question that remains is, are you living meaningfully or just passing the time? Are you playing a role that truly matters to you, or are you merely going with the flow of life without direction? Jung reminds us that time passes, whether we are aware of it or not. Those who find their purpose live more fully and intensely, while those who delay this search risk reaching the end of their lives, realizing they spent too much time occupied with things that, deep down, never really mattered. Now, it is up to you to decide how you want to live. If you enjoyed this content and want more videos that help you better understand yourself and live more consciously, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This helps us continue bringing reflections that can transform your life. Comment below on what impacted you most in this video and which area of your life you feel needs change to live with more purpose. See you in the next video.